Mercedes got totally beaten in the first race of the season, and it looks like the team is ready for new changes. Wolff and Russell were really sure that their no side parts design would bring back the good times and wins to the team. But the reality, check in Bahrain, was like cold water thrown on the Silver Arrows. Now they can barely fight for third place because Aston Martin beat them badly in Bahrain. Wolff hinted that big changes are definitely coming to the W14 car later in the season. After a crazy up-and-down 2022 season, Mercedes stuck with their plan and kept using a special zero side parts design. But they found themselves behind Red Bull, Ferrari, and Aston Martin during the Saudi Arabia weekend. The surprise of Aston Martin doing so well overshadowed a tough day for Mercedes. The team is finally seeing how far behind they've fallen in the last 12 months because of 2022's problem-filled car. Hamilton was 8th at the end of the second practice session, behind both Aston Martin and Red Bull racing drivers as well as Ferrari, a horse, and an Alpine. George Russell couldn't even get into the top 10 and was stuck way down in 13th place. Even though Hamilton was only 0.636 seconds behind the fastest time around the track, he was further back than in the second practice in Bahrain last year. The British driver was most worried about his long race pace, which was way slower than both Alonso and Verstappen. This left him feeling down about the race and even the whole season ahead. While Red Bull dominated in Saudi Arabia on Sunday with Max Verstappen leading a 1-2 finish ahead of Sergio Perez, Lewis Hamilton could only finish 5th in his Silver Arrows. His teammate George Russell was 7th in the first race of 2023. Seven-time F1 world champion Hamilton crossed the finish line 50.97 seconds after Verstappen, who is a strong favorite to win a third title in a row. He has admitted that Mercedes now has the fourth best car after the team, finished 50 seconds behind Max Verstappen during the Bahrain Grand Prix. Mercedes has been struggling with tire wear for most of the weekend on the rough Bahrain track surface. Hamilton came into the race saying the team didn't know much about their race speed. Even though he got a good start, he couldn't match the speed of Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin and both Ferrari drivers. The Ferraris were just faster than us today. We're the fourth fastest team. We were close for a second and then just couldn't keep up with them, he told reporters after the race. We've got a lot of work to do. We've just got to add more downforce to the car because we're missing a lot of downforce. As soon as we put more pressure on the back and the front, we'll pick up that speed. Hamilton also talked about the shared resources between Mercedes and Aston Martin, given how different their performance was between the two teams. Hats off to the Aston Martin team. They did such an amazing job. We've got work to do because half the car is ours. They build their car in our wind tunnel or do their aero work in our wind tunnel, so we've got some work to do. While his race had fun battles with Fernando Alonso at the start and a later multi-lap wheel-to-wheel fight, Hamilton said that Mercedes' speed simply wasn't fast enough to compete for more. With Mercedes struggling for performance, the other Mercedes driver, George Russell, has put Red Bull in a league above the rest of the F1 field. He even went as far as saying he expects them to be able to win all 23 races this year. Red Bull has got this championship wrapped up. I don't think anyone is going to be fighting with them this year. I expect they should win every single race this season. That is my bet, Russell said after finishing 7th in the Bahrain Grand Prix. With the performance they've got, I don't see anyone challenging them. Their pace seems weaker this weekend than it was in testing, which was a bit strange, but, they've got it easy at the moment and they can do what they like. They might not get pole position all of the time because we know that Ferrari are very competitive in qualifying, but when it comes to race pace, I think they're in a very, very strong position. Even Mercedes trackside engineering director Andrew Shovlin was similarly blunt when describing the weekend, the race, and the gap between the Silver Arrows and Red Bull. He said it was a difficult Sunday and that they clearly have a lot of work to do to come up with a plan and try to find improvements. He added that overall grip was missing, and on a high tire wear track like the one in Bahrain, the drivers could do very little to attack their rivals ahead. However, maybe the most disappointed of everyone in the Mercedes box was their team principal. A sad Toto Wolff called the F1 Bahrain Grand Prix his worst day in racing and insisted a big Mercedes upgrade must arrive with urgency. One of the worst days in racing, team principal Wolff said to Sky. Not good at all. We are lacking pace front, right, and center. That is a reflection of the test, and the Red Bull is on a different planet? That is what hurts because they are so far ahead? It reminds me of our best years when we were a second ahead of everybody else. That is the benchmark. For his part, Wolff did his best to add some positivity after the struggles in Bahrain. We need to put one foot in front of the other to come back, but nobody in this team will throw in the towel, he added. We need to dig deeper than we ever have done before, and we can do that. Revealing that this package had been expected to help the W14 with 3/10 of lap time, Wolff has confirmed his comments before the race that the team must now look for stronger solutions. I think it needs to be much more radical in the steps than just hope for a 3/10 upgrade, he said. I think it's just radical. They deserve to be where they are because they did a fantastic job. The good news for us is that there is a lot of Mercedes in there, so we know exactly where to pinpoint it, and that will be helpful in the recovery. Mercedes came into the weekend already behind, but it was unclear just how behind Red Bull the team was. Now after the race, it's crystal clear. We also know that Mercedes is now abandoning its current concept as it doesn't appear to be giving the same performance compared to the rest of the grid. It's important to remember that the 1.4 isn't bouncing, it just lacks a lot of performance. So what's next for Mercedes? An upgrade around the Imola race should see the W14 look very different to before, though Mercedes will have lost around 18 months of development time on its concept compared to its competitors. With Mercedes struggling, it's undeniable Hamilton is reaching a critical point in his career. Lewis could handle one bad year after all the success he's had, and 2022 was his answer to Michael Schumacher's 2005. It was his way of getting back at him for being so good in the past. Michael, on the other hand, was back where he belonged, at the start of the next year, and was free to try to win an 8th World Championship. As for Hamilton, he pointed out that Mercedes was 6/10 behind last year and is still 6/10 behind this year. At age 38, another year with few chances might be too hard to handle. At times in Bahrain, Hamilton's questions about Mercedes' car design seemed to border on rebellion, and Toto Wolff's admission after the first qualifying session of the season that they had made a mistake was at odds with what his technical team said on Friday, when they were still confident in the long-term potential of the Zero Pod. Therein lies the problem, the point of disagreement that could decide Hamilton's future in F1 since he has not yet signed a new contract. Wolff's challenge now, which could be the biggest of his time at Mercedes, is to find the right balance between the long-term success of the team and the short-term needs of a driver who doesn't have time to waste. Hamilton has said that he will stay in F1 as long as it takes to win his 8th title, or as he said in the most recent season of Drive to Survive, to take back the championship that was taken from me. But there may come a time when he has to face the truth. With Verstappen and Red Bull almost certain to win more races for the rest of the current rule cycle, and with Mercedes as George Russell becomes a bigger threat, a big decision may have to be made soon. He won't stay around long enough to see himself become a runner-up, that's for sure. What do you think about Mercedes Bahrain GP? Could they bounce back after a terrible performance? Let us know in the comments below and see you in the next video.